All right, moving on to the next session is our healthcare spotlight. And I would now request Ravi Ramaswamy, who is there he is. Ravi Ramaswamy, sir, to please come and introduce the sessions.
Thanks, Suman, and good morning to one and all. Welcome, Sir Robin Saxby, distinguished dignitaries, Rishi Sir, Shekhar Sir, and friends. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you to the healthcare track of the Future Health Congress. IET have had five such conferences in the past, and this is the first of the Future Tech Congress that we get to see. Engineers and technologists provide vital help in meeting the society's needs and healthcare needs. The future of healthcare is constantly evolving with huge advances in digital healthcare technologies. We at the IET believe that we need to work hand in hand with technology in order to stay relevant in the coming years and improve people's lives. Healthy living is one of IET's strategic area of focus, and we provide solutions to build capability that help take on healthcare challenges at scale. Thanks to Rishi Sir and Shekhar Sir for the support. The team did an awesome work over the past year over multiple themes. We came out with white papers on key healthcare policies and technology initiatives like the health facility registration and IET's response to the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, healthcare professional registry, the digital twins and how does it impact healthcare, personal data protection bill and patient privacy, how should the Indian ecosystem comply with it. We also worked on the draft national strategy on blockchain by Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India. In addition to this, we also had thought leadership with the media in terms of our members talking about how patient privacy concern impacts in healthcare in India, and we were featured in the DataQuest magazine. We also talked about the new age healthcare bruised by COVID, and this was on the ET Health Word. We are also working as a part of the TIFAC task force to recommend top 10 medical devices to be taken up for manufacture under the Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme. Conversation with key industry leaders in healthcare on topics and around scaling healthcare in India, disease surveillance and artificial intelligence in healthcare is something that we are also working on. Thanks to stupendous support from Dilip Mangsuli, Shika Pillai, Neeraj Jain and Atul Kurani, we were able to give life to Sarthi, our disease surveillance project. It's being showcased in the booth. We will also be talking about it. And I strongly suggest that you go and have a look at it, please. I would also place on record the fantastic work done by Dr. Vikram Venkateshwaran, Dr. Sumit Kad, Ajit Ashok, the Siemens team led by Anjali, the Capgemini team with Chakshu, Reshma, Mahesh in driving implementation of this project and bringing it to shape. We now want to take this to the government and seek their guidance on scaling this up to a district, state, and at a national level. Today's event is going to be as exciting as ever. We have with us thought leaders of the healthcare industry sharing their knowledge around multiple dimensions. We will start with a tech debate on 5G in healthcare. Are we ready for it yet? We will follow that up with a use case presentation from Dr. Kiran Atre, titled Intersection of Advanced Technologies and Life Sciences. We will then have a future focus, a presentation by Dr. Doran from Siemens on the human twins. And then we have Dr. Sumit Kad and Ajit Ashok take us through their work on Sarthi, which is IET's disease surveillance project. Without much ado, I would now request the tech debate to sort of get started on. And for that, I have the pleasure in inviting Utpal Mangala, General Manager, Industry Edge Cloud, IBM Cloud Platform. He will be on the virtual mode. We have Aditya Vikram Manpuria, who's the Director from GE Healthcare. We have Kamala Rai, Vice President and Senior Global Head Development Unit at Novartis. Satkirti M, CTO from Airtel, Sudeep De, Chief Information Officer, HCG. I think it's absolutely a power-packed team, and we are delighted to have the people on stage. And with that, I hand over the session to Mr. Utpal to sort of drive this forward. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
Kamla and I are doing this virtual. The rest of the panel members are physically over there. We are absolutely delighted to be part of this group, this panel, and the esteemed work that is being done by IET. Without much delay, let me get right into the topics for discussion, for moderation, and I'll start first with Aditya. Aditya, thank you for joining. Really appreciate it. Let's start the conversation by asking you a question. Are we ready for healthcare with 5G in India? Can you elaborate a bit about the healthcare readiness for 5G in our country?
Thanks, Utpal, and thank you everyone for having me here. So when we talk about 5G readiness in the Indian context, I will try to look at it from three different aspects or three different angles. The first is from the perspective of a consumer. As a patient, as somebody who consumes medical services, am I moving to 5G? Because the providers will need to connect with me using 5G. So am I ready to make the move? Are the healthcare providers excited about 5G? Are they willing to make the move? And finally, as device and solution providers, are we ready to make the move? Right? Where do we stand on all these three fronts? So starting with the consumer, there is a recent report published by Ericsson, and the key finding they have is that the Indian consumer is twice more excited about upgrading to 5G in the coming days. The 5G networks, as we speak, are in the rollout stages, and we expect the entire country to be covered over the next months, if not years, right? Now, when it comes to the healthcare providers, if you look at the digital transformation that they have been undergoing ever since the pandemic, and you look at some of the numbers, I was looking at eSanjeevani portal in the morning, 68 million plus telehealth consultations. That's huge, 68 million, right? And if you look at it, we are maybe looking at a digital front door for such consultations in the future, depending upon the kind of illness that we are talking about. Maybe the digital front door helps decide who needs to actually walk into the hospital and get a physical consult. The walls of the hospital themselves are virtually stretching out. The care is no longer confined to the four walls of the hospital. The continuum of care is expected to extend far beyond it. Take the practical case of what happened during the pandemic, right? My own experience, when I was diagnosed with it last year at the peak, I was treated at home, right? Initial reaction, panic, shock, how can it happen to me? I was pent up in my room all the while, but yet I got it. But trust me, over a period of a few days, you settle in and you realize that you are in the best of hands. You are being taken care of, and this will continue. We will see a trend where over a period of time after surgery or after the critical care has been dealt with, the continuum of care is going to move beyond the hospital. It will be closer and closer home. And that is where a lot of these technologies around remote patient monitoring and others will kick in, right? Today, remote patient monitoring in various forms and facets is being experimented by large chains in India. And it is no longer something that is just a theoretical discussion. People are trying to see how we can leverage remote patient monitoring to help patients and to maybe even predict adverse events. Can we predict it? Can we do something about it? Can we prevent a readmission or an admission going forward? Other areas, something a little more futuristic, although POCs have been conducted, it has been demonstrated that it's possible. Remote surgeries. So as 5G rolls out, as the various capabilities of 5G come to life, we will see more and more increasingly complex use cases come to life. Finally, let's talk about the solution and the device providers. Everyone's excited about 5G. It definitely is a huge opportunity to up the scale and game in the healthcare space. We at GE, we have invested in a 5G innovation lab, and this gives us the ability to experiment and to productize and bring 5G into the various products and solutions that we have. And with that, I would like to now pass it back to Utpal.
Yeah, thank you very much, Aditya. Very insightful, and love the way you put that framework from a digital standpoint. So thank you very much. You come from the art industry, and it will be good to understand how the pharma industry is looking at it. Can you talk a bit on what are some of the pharma innovation use cases that are happening? Maybe start with the value chain, if you will, and how 5G is having an impact, or maybe not having an impact yet. Would love to get your perspective on that. Over to you, Kamala.
Thank you. Thank you, Deepak. Am I audible?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you. I think actually you kind of stole my thoughts. I loved your context on digital door and virtual expansion of the entire hospital space. But I'll come to that in a bit because I'm focused on pharma more, more intensely. I am a digital enthusiast and that's about it. I'm not a technical expert. But what I have done, what I've understood is the fifth generation will really help upgrade, some of the sensors, the sensor grade to a medical grade. So we look at latency, we look at reliability, we look at capacity, we look at bandwidth and what have you, right? So I think when we look at the discovery space, the development space, and the entire value chain people that we talked about, in the discovery space, it's a huge opportunity because we're trying to understand science a lot better, and use of AI and use of ML, and of course 5G will kind of enable that because the quality of medical images that we would have, or the quality of the data that could be really leveraged, that's going to be huge. But I'll specifically focus on trials, on the clinical, on the drug development space. We know it's huge. I was just yesterday in preparation for this talk today, I just looked at the FDA website, I looked at the SAMD approved for clinical trial space. Not clinical trial, let's say clinical investigations. We had, at least last year when I gave a talk, I recollected we had about 400 odd SAMDs approved. And I was surprised yesterday we have about more than 500 SAMDs approved. A lot of it is in the clinical investigation space, which is great. So what's going to happen is digital sensors will really complement the traditional clinical trial space. So what's going to happen is the pharma industry will leverage 5G and turn all this chaos into trial intelligence. We already have a number of applications that are trying to decentralize trials, and we have new guidances as well. So it's not just in the space of discovery, but I think the major impact, and I'm a drug developer, I've been for the past 22 years. I started off, honing my skills around the traditional drug development, generating data at the trial site. But I think we're moving now, the trial site sees to, with 5G, I see more and more trial sites will move from the site to the patient's home. There are a lot of advantages to this, and if you ask me, what is the adoption rates? Traditionally, pharma has been slow in adopting compared to the retail industry, but nevertheless, from the data that I have with me right now, almost 86 to 90% of clinical trial sponsors have adopted digital and decentralized trials, which is great. And I think it's not whether they will or will not, it's how soon pharma industry will kind of engage or adopt. Already technology is such a big component of what we do and how we do, and we have amazing, guidances, frameworks. We also have the entire decentralized trial policies and what have you. So I think it's a fascinating space, and we are all not just watching this space, but we're actually shaping this space because we are within the industry trying to kind of curate as much value, in the trial space. So I think for now, we're trying to kind of look at the chaos and convert it into intelligence. I think that's where we are right now. I'm happy to kind of share some of the insights and some additional parameters as we go along. So back to you, Uttam.
Thank you very much, Kamla. I think your comment, just to summarize it, is not when, but how quickly, and that pretty much sums up the general sentiment. So thank you very much for those. And especially thank you for providing a unique perspective from the pharma standpoint. Moving on to Satkirti, you represent a carrier, you represent a telco, and it would be very good, Satkirti, to get your unique perspective on this. How are the telcos and carriers looking at it? And maybe if you can, without, it's up to you, but without going too much into the details, because I'm sure there's certain confidentiality and other stuff, but if you can show us or talk about a use case where Airtel is helping make an impact, that would be very, very powerful. So over to you, Satkirti.
Yeah, thank you, Upal. I think coming from the technology side of 5G, so 5G for us as telcos is just not about providing, the signals or the coverage across. It's much more beyond in making it relevant to the industry and relevant in particular to three of the big industries in terms of healthcare, manufacturing, and, gaming, etc. that we're looking at. But coming to 5G as a technology, what it does in terms of, what it can leverage is in about giving very, very low latencies, concurrency and high speeds. And taking that, I think what we have done as a POC and what we've been doing over the last 1.5 years specifically, we've tied up with Apollo and a small startup called Teslon into trying and looking at how we can have a connected ambulance case. And we've also been working with rural primary healthcare that's there. But what amazes me even in terms of what technology can do is about ambulance that has doubled up as a mini ICU. And today if you look at India as a country with the population that we have and the healthcare spread that we have, it's not easy for anybody if there's an emergency to get that immediate care that is required, or what in medical parlance they say is the golden hour. So it's all about how soon he can come to the hospital for them to start care specifically. So here what we're seeing is in the ambulance case that we've done is the minute the patient is wheeled into the ambulance, the entire treatment starts. So the paramedic or the technician who's there already has all these systems connected, and there's a doctor online through the 5G connected SIM that we have on the ambulance. And plus we also have something called the vehicle tracking system, which is again fired by 5G, which starts monitoring how soon the ambulance will come to the hospital. So one, in terms of understanding the patient's vitals and starting immediate care in terms of what has happened. It could be, initial signs of a heart attack, in terms of positioning the patient, because you can't lie down. It has to be positioned in a particular way. And the doctor connected remote could actually be able to help the technician to say that these are the things that has to be done. And, they are all fitted with literally what is required in a mini ICU in terms of defibrillator, CPAP, etc. that is required. And then there's also another challenge that hospitals face today is when there is any kind of an emergency or a catastrophe that has happened, with multiple patients coming in, triaging that they call is very, very difficult. So this will actually enable them to know that, okay, ambulance 1 is going to come with a very, very critical patient that we need to shift immediately to critical ICU. Probably 2 and 3 are going to come with something that can be treated in an OPD or normally in the wards or something like that. Better hospital management, immediate care, and what we term as the golden hour is something that's very critical for, the healthcare professionals know better about it. and then how is it that we can enable this to be available to the length and breadth of the country that we have today. So I think as a telco, it's more important for us as to how we can spread our deployments much more faster and then enable this and then move on to actually tie up more with healthcare and startup to actually start becoming just beyond an enabler and see what we can do on the same. But
Thank you very much. As you nicely articulated, the power of 5G provided by the carriers is not just in providing the 5G environment, but it also is about enabling the use case. We all know that 5G will provide low latency, high bandwidth, network slicing, but it's all about taking those features and creating those B2B, B2C use cases that will be able to have an impact. Sudeep, over to you. Give us an example on how you are seeing the 5G in healthcare evolve from your standpoint. I think you have some, when we were discussing, you were having some unique perspective on this, what you are seeing. It'll be good to give the audience a perspective from your standpoint.
Thank you, Utpal. And yes, I thought I would start with the concurrence on all the speakers we just spoke and see the inclination and the interest of the audience and the companies in healthcare. Just adding a different perspective, additional perspective, both these perspectives are very important. I kind of concur with Kamala because clinical trial happens a lot of time at the hospitals also. It was primarily happening at the hospitals, and yes, the ramp up is enormous as far as clinical trials are concerned. The ramp up in terms of having IoTs is enormous. So yes, people are serious there. The perspective which I wanted to add on is I represent SCG. It's a cancer specialty hospital, and we have around 26 hospitals, and why we are unique is we are in around all the tier 2, tier 3 towns. Of course, the hub is in Bangalore, and we are in dire need of a network which is reliable. As we speak, my teams are working in for reliability. The use case specifically is that, you must have come across terms like radiation oncology. Oncology in itself, when we speak about, is about cancer it represents cell, and cell is very individualistic, and hence care has to be very individualistic, means precise for the patient. Okay, for that, the analysis of the patient should be in real time. It is a stream of medicine which does not follow a course or a clinical pathway. It has to be different for every patient, right? For that, we have a mechanism, and there are partners worldwide who are working with us. The kind of technology which is required is, if I have you heard of a town called Gulbarga? Okay, so it's a tier 2 town of Karnataka. We have an institute there with the world-class PET CT equipment that has to send images centrally. Those are to be studied, and a treatment planning system on the fly has to give back when the patient is on the couch. Can you imagine those heavy images coming over, being studied, and in a couple of hours, the treatment plan is to be sent back so that he or she can be given a series of treatments. Same, this is one use case. I leave it at that. I will not take much time. If we want, we can talk at length, because this is the subject of interest for me. I have been into healthcare for around 11 years now, but when I came to oncology, I realized what's happening here. And trust me, in healthcare, oncology is the most talked about space. Okay, there are changes happening every 70 days in some treatment or the other. We spoke about surgeries. That's in need of heavy networks. So we have two kinds of things. One, of course, is the robotic surgery, when a surgeon is remotely sitting. The other is a HoloLens, a surgery which is actually physically done by somebody and is being viewed by somebody else on those intricate parts. So that requires network, and a reliable network. And thank you for, when I hear you saying that we not only focus on latency and throughput, we also focus on reliability. that it does not break, and there are business continuity plans. So we are, as healthcare, and because of paucity of talent and several other shortcomings as far as infrastructure is concerned, we are heavily dependent on this technology. And we are really looking forward to it, Utpal. As we speak, we'll talk more about it. The third case is about genomics. As I said, oncology is more specifically, I'm sorry, taking up to a couple of more minutes. Genomics for a patient in one study generates about 100 GB of data. And it is generated in 4 or 5 days because the sample is cultured and curated and then studied. That 100 GB of data needs to be processed and compared to a therapy. And that, if I try to do it in my on-premise equipment, it's not possible. I have to reach out to the cloud for that processing power. All the bigger clouds have it. For that data to be sent, the curated data is 17 GB. I need to send that data in a few minutes to the central servers on the cloud, get a report in another few hours after it is processed there. So this is the third use case, Utpal. These are 3 use cases which we are presently working on. These are not futuristic. In next 1.5 years, we will have to have all these results. We are making do somehow, but if what we spoke about is achieved, we'll be leaps and bounds ahead.
Thank you very much. Very practical, very pragmatic use cases. I'll mix it up a bit now. So, and I know Kamla, you have to leave a little early. So let me ask you the question first. You mentioned it's a matter of when, not if. Just from a timeline perspective, from a farmer point of view, when do you think that when is going to be more real? Are you giving it a couple of years, next 5 years? Would love to hear what does when mean from your context. You're on mute.
Yeah, I think Sudeep already mentioned that a lot of work is already happening. So it's the same in the clinical trial space. I tried to get data on 5G clinical trials versus 4G. I couldn't get that. But what I got was already decentralized trials are happening already, right? And actually COVID kind of, the first decentralized trial actually happened in 2011, right? Much more before COVID happened. But then what COVID did is actually kind of fired up the entire thing. And now we have, if I'm not mistaken, many sponsors have adopted this. So it's already on. The only challenge we have, I looked at all the pros, right? We have great pros for adopting decentralized trials. We have, it's going to reduce sample size. Already Sudeep mentioned about personalized medicine and personalization of trials actually is going to reduce sample size as well. So that will reduce the costs. There's going to be fewer ethical reviews, there's going to be lower costs, protocol amendments and what have you. There's great pros, right? We have a list of pros. But what's adding to the complexity, and I think hopefully 5G will help address that, is shipping complexity, because now the entire, initially it used to go to a trial site, and the trial site used to take care of the stability and all those things. That's going to be somehow, that's a space to watch out. There's going to be, data privacy, tampering of, drug supplies, temperature tracking, dosing diaries, local laws as well, clinical validation of, I talked about that a little bit, validation of wearable devices, because a lot of that is contingent on patients' compliance and adherence to the usage or adoption of these wearable technologies or the connected devices. Battery life, most important, right? Awareness. And above all of that is digital literacy, how literate, because already, I think 5G we have about 13 cities in India, to the extent I know, that are 3G enabled, 5G enabled. But if our trials have to go to, then we have to look at a combination of hybrid and decentralized, and that could add to the complexity. And so I think it's going to be, it's going to take a while before the entire country gets 5G, because that would, the digital inequity that would creep in, right, if we exclude a sizable population from not participating in decentralization for the lack of 5G is a topic. Another insight I want to leave you with is Europe actually commissioned a study on the, and Sudeep, maybe you know this already, is the impact of 5G on health. It's the other way around, right? On the radiation effects, and there are mixed opinions on how 5G could in fact increase cancers, hopefully not, but that's what is a commissioned study that I was reading recently. So I think there are these fears that are already, that need to be addressed, that's real. But maybe that's an insignificant portion. I think the bigger portion is the infrastructure upgrade and getting the rest of not just India, but even the digital divide globally is quite significant. Even in the US, I was reading that apparently 7% of US does not have internet access. So that's a significant population issue. And also, if this may be it's 2-year-old study, 2019 study, it said that 64% of healthcare providers complain of lack of access to technology. I mean, this may be the patient side. So I think there are all these things to kind of deal with. Digital literacy, digital divide, digital inequity, health literacy, all of this is going to play a huge role in digital adoption. And yeah, I'll leave you with that. I can go on, but I think time is of essence and I want to kind of listen into other perspectives as well. So yeah, over to you, Utpal.
Thank you very much, Kamla. Very valid points, all of those. Aditya, over to you. Has Kamla covered all the points, or are there any more from your perspective which are currently inhibitors to scaling the healthcare?
See, I think we've pretty much touched on all the broad points, but there's one piece that I want to emphasize, and that is about the data itself. Right? We talk about, and Sudeep kind of referred to that when he spoke about the needs to move these massive image files or genetic information across. Now, when we look at somebody who's come in for treatment or somebody who wants to be diagnosed, we want to collect as much information, and it's not just a particular type. We want to collect longitudinal information about this patient over time, multimodal data, and then try to figure out what is the best way to then diagnose and then treat this particular patient. Right? Now, data is of essence. We will have to figure out ways and means to tap into the data that is getting generated. And we should also have a framework by which this data can be leveraged by the different players in the healthcare ecosystem. So it's not just about having tons of data being generated. It is also the policy angle and the framework angle as to how all this data can be made available for the benefit of society at large. Back to you, Utpal.
Thank you very much. I will come to Satyaki in the end in terms of wrapping this up because of some of the questions where probably we will be asking for her input. But let me go to Sudeep first. Sudeep, since I'm going through here, any additional points that you would like to add in terms of what is required for scaling? Because you did mention some of the technology as inhibitor, digital divide has come up. Anything else that you would mention based on the studies and use cases that you are doing in various areas of healthcare and in tier 2 cities and different places in the country?
Not just on the geographical spread, Utpal, I would rather say, and the onus is 50-50 on us as well as the users and on providers as the providers of the service. Security of data which is traversing has to be of paramount importance. From their perspective, what is expected is we should have the latest hardware which is implement penetrable, and I'm sure if I'm speaking about it and people who are managing, they are far ahead of me in terms of doing that. But while we are transacting, I'm not saying transactions as in just as financial transaction, we are talking about heavy loads, payloads. That data needs to be secure as well. So all kind of compliances, are they adequate? They are to be debated, they are to be understood, and they have to be adhered. And as Kamala was saying, that yes, how does a study gets reported after the trial has happened? CDs are sent. You know how secure they are. Now, when we send it through pipes, and that is what we are projecting towards with the advent of technology, we have to make sure that it is built in the design to secure that data, because otherwise we know what is going to happen. Right, so security is another dimension, Utpal, which we have to collectively take responsibility and drive towards making it as much secure as possible. Yeah?
That's a very valid point over there, security, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because no conversation is complete without that. Moving on to Satkiti, obviously there's a lot of positives, and then there's a lot of things that still need to be done. For example, building the digital divide or reducing the gap, certain levels of security, etc. Some of those would obviously be provided by the carriers. But to be candid, we can't expect the carriers to solve all the problems. But there's one theme that came up a little bit early, and we'd love to get your perspective on this. The 5G is getting rolled out in multiple cities. But what's the plan of getting this coverage to the rural segments, to the corners, each and every remote corner of our country, so that the benefit of technology and the 5G healthcare can be leveraged by people in all parts of the country? Would love to get your thoughts on that.
So I think in terms of coverage today, like we said, we've already 10 plus towns is already where we're radiating, and we're just moving by the day. So end of December to early February is where we want the top 100 towns of India to be covered, because this is a massive journey that all of us have taken, and Airtel, being a all India operator, has taken its thing, saying that we should be available everywhere. On the remote, very, very important point, because today our healthcare specifically is highly urban centric and not that much on the rural side. So it's important for us to actually look at what is it that we can do, at least in terms of basic primary health care that we can do. So like we said, one of the important use cases that we've done is we've tied up with a doctor who's come in from the defense, and we did something called an AmbuPod, which is a small auto which is built with complete healthcare that is required and can be moved to any rural. But technology today, yes, 4G is available. There are certain things that you can do, but in terms of having direct connect to a doctor which is sitting out of a city or a tier 2, tier 3 town, you need 5G, because that kind of latencies are required for you to actually pick up what is a concern and address it then and there. So our plan is to actually aggressively roll out across the width of it. Yes, we will move in more from the urban metros, tier 2, tier 3 to rural, but over the next 12 months is where we're looking at 12 to 14 to 16 odd months is where we're looking at having entire India, whatever we have in terms of today, the sites to be completely 5G enabled. And I just want to pick up a point that came in from both Aditya and Sudeep in terms of data, etc. Today, if you look at 5G, 5G is yes a technology, but if we look at solutioning, or if you look at what we can as an enabler, it's built across 4 pillars. So basically, one is about connectivity, which 5G provides both in terms of coverage and speeds, data, capability, etc. 2 is IoT, which is a very, very big industry, and it's extremely important for us to understand the importance of IoT. Be it an ambulance, be it anything. I know IoT is something that can be enabled even in rural, because it's just a SIM that has to go carry. And today we're doing metering, we're doing so much more with IoT, all your Paytms, enablement, etc. is there. Third is a cloud, which is extremely important for us in terms of having the data, the edge cloud, so that we can get it much more faster, which is available. And obviously, the fourth is all about analytics, which is all about data that we have. And these 4 pillars is what will actually enable the future of technology being what it is, and then how is it that we can actually provide a far better, robust environment that's there.
Thank you very much, Satkiti. As coming from a technology company, all the technology words that you mentioned were music to my ears. So I live that and I work on that every day. So really looking forward to seeing how we can collectively help. Team, we are running out of time. I hope this was a very useful conversation. As you realize, a platform needs to be built, an ecosystem needs to be created, and what you saw here in this panel was an ecosystem of various partners coming in from different areas to help create the healthcare of the future. The future of healthcare with the 5G is immense, and I think it's just a matter of realizing the potential opportunities and also disintegrating the existing system in a positive way and disintermediating it in a positive way to create the power for serving healthcare to the next generation. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the time. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My sincere thanks to Dr. Utpal, Dr. Kamala, Aditya Vikram, Satkirti and Sudeep for enlightening this audience with the concepts and what we can expect from 5G in the near to short-term future. Yes, there will be challenges, but I am sure the benefits far outweigh it. For felicitation of this team, can I request Dr. Pradeep Srivatsava, Executive Director, Technology, Information and Forecasting Assessment Center, to come on stage. And Kiran Atre, please. Prior to joining TIFAC, Dr. Srivatsava was the professor and head of School of Biochemical Engineering at IIT BHU Varanasi. He is also a member of the IET Future Tech Panel's Water Working Committee. It's a pleasure to have you on stage, Dr. Srivatsava.